Welcome back. Today we are going to be building on our previous two videos in this series. Today we're going to take the data gathered from our form and send it to our database on the server side. If you guys missed those previous two videos where we created the HTML form and validated it with PHP, there will be links up top and down below in the description. So as you guys can see, we already have our HTML and CSS form on our WAMP server here, and it's fully validated based on the PHP that we used in the last video. What we need to do before we continue today is go down here and make sure that our WAMP icon is green and it says all services running. If it's not green, I have a video walking you through how to fix it. There will be a link up top and down below in case you need help, and do not be afraid to reach out to us through the comments on this video. Once that's green and everything's good to go, what we're gonna do is hop back into our code today. And if you guys remember from the PHP validation portion, we have if validation pass equals yes, it's going to run this code down here. That's where we're going to put our additional PHP to connect to our database and insert our form data that our users submit into that database with a custom table using PHP and MySQL. So first, what we need to do is actually connect to our database. So we're going to start off by creating a variable called dbConnect, and this is going to be specifically for connecting to our database. Today we're going to be using MySQL, which is going to be the procedural version of going about this. There's the procedural version and the object-oriented version. If you guys want to see the object-oriented version, I will make another video if I get 10 likes or more here today, and I'll do both ways for you guys. But the reason I'm doing the procedural version is for those beginners out there that are just learning PHP. I believe that it's best to learn it this method before moving on to the object-oriented version. And then we're gonna go ahead and type _connect, and this is how we're going to connect to our database here. And in our case, we are connecting to a locally hosted web server here. So our host name, which you guys can see, Visual Studio Code is already showing us that our host name needs to go here, is simply going to be localhost because we are connecting again to a locally hosted web server called WAMP. Visual Studio Code will show you guys that you need to input your username right here. In our username, we just left it as root. If you didn't create a username, it is going to be root as well. The only way it's not going to be root is if you guys changed your username. So input that here. Lastly is going to be the password that you need to connect to this database. Again, if you haven't created anything, your password is going to be nothing. If you did change it, that password would go right here. And then we want to specify that if we're not able to connect to it, we want to kill our script. So we're going to type or die, and then we're simply going to paste a p tag in here like so that says unable to connect to the database server. So this will display if you're unable to connect to your database. And we also have a class equal to error, and all that class is going to do is make our text here red if it displays on our screen. Then what we want to do is concatenate the next portion of this error. So we're going to type period, and then we're again going to add a p tag, and it's going to include error code here, and then we're also going to concatenate a colon, which is going on right here. And then what we want to do is actually display our error number here. So we're going to type MySQL _connect and then error number, and then we want to make sure that we include our closing p tag. And what this is going to do right here is this is going to display our error number if it does not connect successfully to our database on our screen. So it will display on this side on our UI portion of this project, and it will help us debug and figure out what's going on, why we cannot access our database. Then I accidentally left this parenthesis up here, so I'm going to Control X that and put it right here where it needs to go. And then another error that I'm having, and you want to pay close attention to this as you develop this on your own, is make sure you have all the periods and everything in the right place. So in my case, I need to add a period to concatenate this right here, and then that will go ahead and get rid of that red line showing me that I have an error. Next, what I want to do is actually create a variable for my database. So I'm going to go db name to create a variable for my database. And then my database here is going to be practice, for example. So now I have a variable that is holding the name of my desired database. And now before anybody submits this form, there's not going to be any database yet because we haven't created a database or a table or anything like that. So what we need to do is set up our if statement. So now we need to specify MySQL I _select database here. And now we want to actually add a exclamation point in front of this, because if it is not able to connect, we want to run the code inside of our if statement. And now we want to insert the variable that we used for our database connect. So we're going to go ahead and add that right here. And then we're also going to add our database. So this line of code is going to look if our database is accessible or not. And if we cannot connect up here, we're going to run this line of code. And so first we're going to set up a variable called SQL string, like so. And this is going to be equal to a SQL query. So what this means is that this line is actually going to run SQL, which is how you add information into a database. So we're going to type create database, like so, because we want to create our database because we weren't able to connect to it because it doesn't exist. And then we want to create our database name here. So we're going to grab our PHP variable DB name and add it right here. Now we want to create a variable called query result. And what this is going to do is it's going to run our MySQL query that we have up here, because obviously we want to create the database. So we're going to go MySQL I _ query, and MySQL I _ query is going to run our SQL query. And then again, we want to go ahead and add database connect. We want to connect to our database, and then we want to run the SQL string that we created above. So here we're going to type our SQL string variable, and what this line of code is going to do is it's actually going to connect to the database, and then it's going to run this line of code here, which is going to create our database named practice right here. Make sure you put your ending semicolon there. And then if we're not able to successfully complete this query, we want to kill our script. So we're going to type or die, and we're simply going to paste another p tag with the error class that says unable to execute the query. And again, if this is unable to work, it's going to display unable to execute query on your screen on the user interface right here. And then we want to type a period to concatenate the next line of our code. I'm going to paste it here. What this code is going to do is it's again going to add a p tag that displays error code, and then we're going to go MySQL error no, which is error number, and then it's going to display our error number based on our database connect variable here. And then we're also going to add the MySQL error database connect. So MySQL I error no is going to display the error number as to why this did not work up here. And then MySQL I _ error is going to display the text portion of the error. So you have the code and the text both describing to you what the issue is. And then we want to go ahead and move our parenthesis here to the end of our line of code. And then we are having an error here with our or. So what we want to do is remove our semicolon, because that's why that issue is being displayed there, because you do not want a semicolon on this portion. Now below all of this, we're going to connect to our database now, because now we should have our database created inside of our server. So what we're going to do is we're going to go MySQL I again, and we're going to go connect. Now underneath all of that, we need to actually select our database. So we're going to go MySQL I _ select _ DB to select our database. And then again, we're going to use our database connect variable to connect to our database. And then we want to select our database name variable, which is going to be practice here. And then we want to add the ending semicolon. Now we have created our database if it does not already exist. But now we need to create a table within our database. So now we're going to create a variable called table name, and we're going to insert what we want our table to be called. So our table is just simply going to be called customers. So this will be a great example if you are building an e-commerce website or you need to store some sort of customer data, client data on your website. And now we're going to use our SQL string variable again, but we're going to set it to a new value. And this is going to be a new SQL string, and this is going to be select all, which is going to be an select asterisk like so. And then from our table name variable, which is going to be customers. So we're going to type our table name variable here, like so. And then we're going to need to reset our query result variable here to actually run our query. So we're going to make this equal to MySQL underscore query again, because we want to run our SQL query. And we're going to use our database connect variable again. And then we're also going to use our newly revised SQL string variable here. And now we have our variables for this portion properly set up. Now what we want to do is set up another if statement, and what we're going to do with this if statement is we're going to try and select the information from our table. But if we cannot select the information from our table, it means it doesn't exist, so we need to create that table. So we're going to go if, and then we're going to go query result here. We're going to put our query result variable here, and then we also want to add our exclamation point in front of our variable, and this is going to mean if we're not able to successfully run this variable here, which connects to our database and then runs our select all from our table name of customers up here is what's going on. Then what we need to do is again redo our SQL string variable. So what we're going to do is we're going to redo that right here, and we're going to make that equal to the value of creating our new table. So we're going to write our SQL query here, and this is going to be create table like so. And then we want to create our customers table because it doesn't exist if we go through this line of code here. So we're going to add our table name variable here to create our customers table, because again, we were not able to connect to it and run our SQL string. So and here's where we're going to start creating the table columns for our table name customers. First name here, and then we're going to go last name. We're going to keep this basic so this video doesn't go forever, and we're going to make these varchars, which again are going to be any input here. So we're going to go varchar 20, and we don't have to be worried about making these any input because we already have our PHP validating our form from the last video, and that won't allow any vicious code or characters to go into our database, into our server, and hack us or anything like that. And then we are going to put our last name here. We're going to make this a varchar value again of just 20. You can do more if you want, but I don't think anybody for the most part has a last name or first name more than 20 characters, but for the sake of this video, that's what we're going to use. So now we are creating our table, and these are going to be our table columns. We have first name, last name, and then their values are both varchar, which means they'll take 20 of any characters. So now we have our SQL query set up, and what we want to do now is actually run this. So we want to again use our query result variable here to actually run this line of code that we created above so we can create our table successfully. So query result is going to be equal to MySQL underscore query, because this is what we're going to want to run. And then it's going to be database connect again, because we want to connect to our database. So we're going to go ahead and select that variable. And then we want to run our SQL string that we have above, because that's going to create our table along with the proper columns. And then again, if this does not properly work, we want to add our code in again like so. So we're going to write or die. So only if this doesn't work, this code down here will run. It's going to display unable to create the table, and then it's going to display our error number and then our error text down here. So now below this, we're going to include or die, and then we want it to display unable to create the table, and then we want it to display our error code, which is why we're using MySQL underscore error no here, and then our database connect variable. And then it will also, with MySQL underscore error, display the error text. So we'll have both the number and the text as to why this is not working. Now what we need to do is create a variable for each one of our form inputs so we can take that data that is inserted into the form and then insert it into our database. So we're going to start off by creating a variable for our database. That's why we're putting DB first name. And then what you want to do is you want to make sure you add the PHP function add slashes, because this is going to add slashes in front of any special characters to make sure that the data is correctly inserted into your database. And then we want to grab our values from our form with the post method, because that's the method that we specified when we created our form. And now we want to grab the name values from each one of our input fields. So for example, name is going to be name, then email is email, then phone is phone down here, and then message is going to be message. So that's how we're going to select our values. So back up here in the post, going to put name for our first name, and then we're simply going to copy and paste this down for each one. So I'm going to copy this, paste it below, change this to phone. So I'm going to call this database phone like so, and then I'm going to change this simply to phone. And then I'm going to paste it again for the email and the message. So now we're successfully grabbing our name, phone, email, and message input fields from our HTML form. Now what I actually want to do is I actually want to manipulate this table here, because we don't even have a last name. And it's important to recognize this because I did this on purpose to show you guys what I'm talking about. So we have first name, last name only, but we don't even have a last name input. We just have the full name. So you want to make sure that this makes sense. In this case, it doesn't make any sense because we have last name and first name, and we only have a name input here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up here, and then I'm going to change this to phone like so. And then what I also want to do is I want to add 2 more, because I also want to include if they insert an email and a message, which I'm not doing at all right now. And again, you want to collect all the data from the form input, because you want all that data to go into your newly created database. So now we're actually going to create a table that makes sense, because we're going to gather our name, our phone, our email, and user message from the form using these variables right here, which is going to be all the available user inputted data. And now we want to go ahead and change our SQL string variable again here, and this is going to be another line of SQL. That's why I keep reusing this variable to get through to everybody that this is going to be SQL right here in this variable. And what we want to do here is we want to insert all these variables here into our table that we will be creating here. We want to insert into our table name variable, which is going to be customers that we created up here. And then I actually forgot to add insert into. You need to make sure that you add both of these here to insert into your table correctly. And then we want to specify our values here, and our values are going to be our variables that we created right here, and these need to go inside of single quotes like so. So I'm going to grab each one of these and add it into this values section here. And so now we have our SQL string is equal to insert into our table, and then the values are going to be each one of our input fields that we specified up here using our variables. Now we just need to write one more line of code to make this completely work. So we're going to include our query result variable one more time like so, and we're going to make that equal to MySQL underscore query. And then what we want to do is connect to our database. So we're going to go database connect, and then we want to run our SQL string variable that we just created up top right here to insert our values. And then what we want to do from here is if it fails, we want to again display our error number and error text again below there. So we're going to go ahead and just copy that and simply paste it here, save it to format that. So now this is going to be fully functional, but what you don't want to forget to do is close this connection, because you don't want to leave this connection open because it leaves you susceptible to hacking. So we're simply at the bottom of our code going to go MySQLi underscore close, and then we're going to close our connection here by typing database connect. Make sure you include your semicolon or you're going to mess up your code, and then go ahead and save that. And then now that we have all of this, we're going to save all of this and we're going to go try it out. So we're going to go open our form here, and then we're going to insert our information. So I'm going to go type in John, and then I'm going to type in Kalman Web Design. Looks good like that. So here's our email address at Kalman Web Design, and here's our phone number at Kalman Web Design. But again, in our last video, we set this to actually look for our dashes here. So we want to make sure we add our dashes, and then we're simply going to write hello world like so. Go ahead and submit this, and then it's going to give us our message, thanks for submitting. Then we'll exit out of that, and we should be good to go now. So what I want to do is actually open the console. So to do that, I'm going to go to my WAMP server icon here, and I'm going to go to MySQL, hover over that, and then I'm going to go to MySQL console. And then again, you want to enter your username. If you did not change it, it's going to be root. Hit OK. Password, again, if you didn't add anything for your password, it's going to just be nothing. If you did create a password, go ahead and type it here, but keep in mind that it's not going to display any letters. But if you're typing on your keyboard, it is entering. What we want to do is just go ahead and hit enter like so, because we don't have anything for our password right now because we're just on our locally hosted server. Now we want to start using SQL to actually display our database data here. So we're going to type use practice, which is the name we used for our database name, and then we're going to hit enter. It's going to say database change. So if you see database change like you're seeing here, you know that your database has been created. And then we're going to select all from our table. So we're going to select and then asterisk from our table, which is customers. And then make sure you put that semicolon. And now you guys can see that all the information in our database is being inserted correctly, because we can use SQL in the SQL console here on our WAMP server to display it just like so. And there is another easier way to display it, but I personally like to test it like this because you know for sure that it's working. The other way you can look at this is you can go back to your WAMP server and then go to PHP MyAdmin like so, and then go in here. Again, our username is root. We do not have a password, so we're going to go ahead and log into this right now. And then on the left side, you will see all of your databases here. So our practice database has been added here. We're going to click that, and then we can see the table right here, which is called customers. We're going to click that, and then now we can see that it's going to run select all from our customers table, and you guys can see all our customer data right here in PHP MyAdmin. So super cool functionality if you need to create a database and table using PHP and MySQL all at the same time. And keep in mind, we're going to be making a follow-up video to this because this only works in your locally hosted web server. But for example, if you're using a shared hosting service, it's going to be a little bit different, and I'm going to go ahead and show you guys that in the next video. If you guys have any questions, reach out to us through this video or go to our website at kalmanwebdesign.com and we will help you out. Thanks so much for watching.